The number one reason sales fail isn't price. It's the psychological gap between a customer's interest and that final commitment. But what if the secret to bridging that gap was to get them hooked with a long chain of tiny, low-friction agreements before they ever even see the price tag? And that is exactly what we're going to break down today, the powerful science of micro-commitments.
Just let that sink in for a second. It's not the dollar amount that spooks people, not at first. It's the massive weight of the decision. It's that mental leap from, this looks interesting, to, okay, I'm putting my money down for this. That gap, it's a huge chasm of doubt and skepticism. And most companies, they try to fix it with better features or lower prices, but honestly, they're working on the wrong problem entirely.
So how do you build a bridge across that chasm? Well, you don't try to build some massive single-span bridge that could just collapse under its own weight. No, as this slide suggests, you build it link by tiny link. You create this chain of small, almost effortless agreements that gently pulls the customer across, making the whole journey feel natural, even inevitable, not like some big, risky jump.
And that leads us right into our first big idea, the commitment paradox. It seems logical, right? To focus on the big prize, the sale. But the moment you do that, you trigger every defense mechanism the customer has. You're forcing them to think about the end of the journey before they've even taken a single step. The real game isn't about getting one big yes. It's about engineering a whole series of tiny, almost subconscious yeses that build a powerful momentum, making that final decision feel like the only logical thing to do.
Okay, so let's just look at this side by side, because it makes it so clear. On the left, you got the old way, the big ask first model. This is like walking up to a stranger and asking for a huge favor. What happens? Their guard goes way up. The whole conversation is just filled with friction and skepticism. Their brain isn't thinking about value. It's zeroed in on the price, the cost. And of course, the risk of them just walking away is massive. But now, flip over to the right, the small ask first model. It starts with something so easy, it's almost a reflex. This creates super low friction and uses a person's natural inertia, right? It's just easier to say yes and keep going. Their focus shifts from the final price to just the very next simple step. This doesn't just lower the risk of them leaving, it actually builds this incredible psychological momentum. So if this whole micro-commitment thing is so effective, why did it become so important now? This wasn't just some clever idea somebody dreamed up in a meeting. It was a solution born out of a real crisis. To really get it, we need to look at two things: the crisis that created the problem, and a timeless psychological clue that showed us the way out. And folks, this is the crisis we're talking about. For years, the internet was kind of like the Wild West. You could run a few ads, get some clicks, and find new customers pretty cheaply. But then things got crowded, the ad platforms got saturated, and the cost to get one person's attention, what we call customer acquisition cost, or CAC, it just started to climb, and then it went through the roof. Companies were just burning through cash to get people in the door, only to watch them bounce a few seconds later. The old model of just shouting about your offer was becoming a fast track to going out of business. And this chart right here, man, it really shows you the pressure cooker these businesses were in. You can just see that cost to get a new customer climbing higher and higher. What used to be a manageable expense is now becoming a critical make-or-break problem. This intense economic pressure is what made that old big ask-first model totally unsustainable. You just can't afford to pay this much for a potential customer only to scare them off with a big price tag right away. A new, smarter, more efficient engine was desperately needed. So, with that old engine sputtering, where did companies find the blueprint for a new one? Well, they found the clue in classic behavioral science, specifically in the work of Dr. Robert Cialdini and his incredible principle of commitment and consistency. The core idea is actually really simple. We are hardwired to be consistent. We have this deep internal need to stick with the decisions we've already made. So, once we say a small yes, our brain is basically primed to say a bigger yes later on, just to stay consistent with who we think we are. It's a fundamental part of how we operate. To put it really simply, what we're talking about here is just the automated, digital version of the classic foot in the door technique. I'm sure you've seen it in action. A charity worker asks if you have just a moment. Then they ask you to sign a quick petition, and only then do they ask for a donation. By getting that first tiny yes, they massively increase the odds of getting the final, bigger yes. This strategy just takes that proven human principle and applies it to a digital journey, one simple click at a time. All right, so we get the why, the economic crisis, and we get the core psychology, the consistency principle. Now let's pop the hood and see exactly how this machine is built. how do you take these ideas and engineer what we can call the momentum engine? The whole thing breaks down into this super clear 4-stage process. And trust me, the sequence is everything. It all kicks off with a low-friction ask to just get the ball rolling. Then it shifts to a behavioral investment, where the user starts to put some of their own skin in the game. That is then locked in by the consistency anchor, which actually shifts their identity. And only then, at the very end of all this, do we bring in the high-friction ask, the price. So let's break down stage 1, the low-friction ask. The key here, and I mean the absolute key, is that the first interaction has to be a total no-brainer. We are not asking for an email. We are not asking to create an account. We're asking them to click one button in a poll, answer one easy question, maybe drag a slider. The goal isn't even to collect data. The one and only goal is to get that first tiny yes, to break their inertia and just slide right past their skepticism with a request so small it feels easier to do it than to ignore it. The second you get that first yes, you pivot right into stage 2, the behavioral investment. This is where the user starts investing their own resources. Not money yet, but something just as precious, their time and their effort. This could be creating a free account, filling out a quick profile, or uploading a single file. Each little action is like them making a small deposit of effort into their account with you. And this is so critical because it starts to trigger that powerful sunk cost fallacy. They are now, literally, invested in the process.
Okay, stage 3 is where the real magic happens, especially when it comes to their identity. We call it the consistency anchor. As the user completes these small investments, checking things off an onboarding list, watching a progress bar fill up, their whole self-perception begins to change. They're not just some random person browsing a website anymore. In their own mind, they are now a successful user of this tool. They've already achieved things. This new identity becomes an anchor, and every choice they make from here on out is seen through the lens of what would a successful user like me do next.
And only now, after all of this careful psychological groundwork has been laid, do we finally get to stage 4, the high-friction ask. This is the price tag, the moment you ask for the credit card. But look at the context now. It's completely different. The momentum is at its peak. The user has invested their time, they've built this new identity. The idea of just walking away and losing all that progress actually feels more painful than the price of continuing. The purchase isn't some risky jump anymore, it's just the final logical step to lock in all the value they've already created. We've looked at the mechanics of the engine, but to really master this, we have to understand the fuel. What are these deep human behaviors that give this whole sequence its power? Let's go one level deeper into the psychology of yes. This slide just breaks it down perfectly. Think of it like this. You've got two forces working together here, a pull and a push. The pull is that commitment and consistency principle we talked about. This is an internal drive. It's the user's own desire to be logical, to act in a way that makes sense with their past choices. They are literally pulling themselves forward. And then you have the push. This comes from something called loss aversion, which shows up as the sunk cost fallacy. Basically, we hate losing stuff way more than we enjoy gaining it. The user starts to fear wasting all the time and effort they've already put in. That fear of loss pushes them to finish. This really is the heart of it all. Each one of those little micro-commitments is transforming a neutral prospect into a self-identified user. This isn't just a sales tactic. It's an identity-shaping process. The user isn't being convinced of anything. They are gradually becoming a customer through their own actions. The final purchase is just them confirming the identity they already built for themselves, one tiny step at a time. All right, so this all sounds great in theory, right? But how do you actually put it into practice? How do you build this for your own thing? Let's shift from the what and the why to the how, with a really practical framework for engineering your funnel. Getting this right really boils down to 3 critical design principles. First, you've got to isolate the asks. You have to become a detective and find the 2 or 3 key actions that tell you a user is going to stick around. We call these aha moments. Is it inviting a friend, creating their first project? Find them. Second, sequence velocity. The order is so important. Your very first ask has to be the easiest, the fastest. Then you can gradually ask for a bit more. And finally, number 3, and this is a big one, redesign onboarding. Stop thinking about it as a boring tutorial. Think of it as a consistency checklist, a guided path that's designed to give the user a series of small, satisfying wins. And let's make that last point really concrete. Just look at this example. Instead of a bunch of random tasks, this onboarding is framed as a clear path to success. Create free account. Boom, Check. That's a little win, a little dopamine hit. Complete profile setup? Check. Another win, another investment of their time. Upload first document? Check. Now they're seeing it actually work for them. Every box they check isn't just a task. It's reinforcing that consistency anchor, making them feel smart and successful, and visually guiding them toward that final goal, which now just feels like the last satisfying thing to check off the list.
So as we pull all these pieces together, the economic pressure that created the need, the psychological principles that give it power, and the step-by-step funnel that puts it all into action, we arrive at the inevitable conclusion.
The huge shift in thinking is this: sell the next small step, not the final product. Your job isn't to convince a stranger to make some massive commitment right out of the gate. Your job is to make the very next tiny, logical step so irresistible and so easy that they can't help but take it. When you focus obsessively on just that one next step, you build a chain of yeses that leads them exactly where you want them to go, but it feels like a journey they're choosing for themselves.
And this really says it all. The best marketing doesn't push people through a funnel, it pulls them toward value. It pulls them because the final decision wasn't ever one single decision. It was pre-made piece by piece in a dozen smaller steps. By breaking a huge, scary commitment into a series of small, irresistible agreements, the final purchase becomes not a moment of risk, but simply the logical, low-friction conclusion to a journey the customer willingly chose to begin.